This is Tumani Kamara, and it's time to open up the briefcase with Casey Holdahl.
Greetings, Blazer fans, and welcome to The Briefcase, episode 94 of The Briefcase, and the last 2024 exit interview edition of The Briefcase. I am your host, Casey Holdahl, and we'll go around the scoreboard to check in on the first round of the NBA playoffs once again, which are starting to get closer and closer to some of those series being decided, or at least mostly decided, go through one of the newest mock drafts, and hear from both Chauncey Billups and Joe Cronin as we wrap up exit interviews on this edition of The Briefcase. Since it's the most timely thing, let's go ahead and start with the NBA playoffs, starting with the Western Conference, the important conference. The 1-seed Thunder hold a 2-0 lead after blowing out the 8-seed Pelicans 124-92 Wednesday night in Oklahoma City. You kind of figured that might happen after the Pelicans lost game 1 by just 2 points. Anytime you have an emotional loss like that, a lot of times it carries over into the next game as much as you wish it wouldn't. Now that series shifts to New Orleans, where game 3 is scheduled for Saturday at 12:30 p.m. In a game I'm sure a lot of Trailblazer fans were interested in, the 2-seed Nuggets are on the verge of sweeping the 7-seed Lakers for the second consecutive year in the postseason after taking Game 3 112-105 Thursday night in Los Angeles. LeBron was doing the hold at the end of the day, it's just basketball routine in the post-game press conference. So best case, maybe the Lakers win Game 4 to avoid the sweep, but that series, and probably this iteration of the Lakers, if you could really even call it that, it seems like it's always kind of a rotating cast around LeBron and AD anyways. But either way, that series just about done. That iteration of the Lakers, I imagine, just about done. Could be over as early as Saturday, since Game 4 is at 5:30. The Nuggets really rounding into form, and this time around, I don't see a whole lot of people claiming that the Lakers are playing the most competitive sweep in NBA playoff history. Also, it's been fun to see how many times the Nuggets, which I believe it's now at 11, have beat the Lakers in a row, because that always brings up the Trailblazers. Beat the Lakers at one point in time, during my stretch with the team, obviously, 16 times in a row. Technically, Boston has the record. I think it's 22 times in a row, but that was back in the 50s when the Lakers were still in Minneapolis, and the league had like 5 teams. And I think they lost 22 straight times over the course of like 3 seasons, which that don't count. Moving on, the 3-seed Timberwolves are now 2-0 on the 6-seed Suns after 2 convincing victories in Minneapolis. Game 3 is scheduled for Friday at 7:30, and it feels like the Suns need to get both those in Phoenix to have any chance in this series. If they split it, that one's going to be a gentleman's sweep by the time they get back to Minneapolis. I thought we'd see a little bit more out of the Suns. Hasn't really been the case through the first 2 games. And in the 4-5 matchup in the West, the Clippers and the Mavericks are tied at 1-1 with the series shifting to Dallas. I said in the last edition, and I'll say it again, I think the team that wins Game 3 in this series, which is scheduled for Friday at 5 p.m., is going to end up winning the series. Then heading over to the Eastern Conference, the 8-seed Heat shot 54% from 3 in Game 2 to even the series versus the 1-seed Celtics at 1-1 with the series heading south to Miami. Game 3 is scheduled for Saturday, which is wild considering they haven't played since Wednesday, and that's a 3 p.m. start time in Miami. The 7-seed Sixers behind Joel Embiid, who probably should have been ejected on multiple occasions in Game 3 for play that I think even calling it dirty is probably giving it too much credit. And he's also playing through a bout of Bell's palsy, so I guess you maybe kind of let it slide. But the Sixers were able to get their first game in Philadelphia, 125-114, to get the series to 2-1 versus the 2-seed Knicks. Game 4 is scheduled for Sunday at 10 a.m. And then in a game that's happening here in just a couple hours, Damian Lillard and the 3-seed Bucks are in trouble after losing Game 2 to the 6-seed Pacers, 125-108 in Milwaukee. Game 3, as I mentioned, scheduled for Friday at 2:30. Chris Middleton is listed as a game-time decision. With Giannis already out, if Chris Middleton doesn't play, they should maybe just sit guys and try to pick things up for Game 4. And at this point, if Giannis has anything he's able to give them off the bench, he should probably do so by Game 4, because if not, they're going to lose another first-round series. And granted, you don't want to do anything that's going to lead to a long-term injury. That soleus muscle sometimes can be the precursor for an Achilles injury, which is obviously much more serious. But at this point, if you're just holding off because you're trying to play in the second round, you got to get there first. And I don't know if the Bucks are going to be able to get there if Chris Middleton and Giannis are out. Heck, they might not be able to get there with just Giannis out. And then finally, in the series that I don't think anyone's paying a whole lot of attention to, the 5-seed Magic thumped the 4-seed Cavaliers in Game 3 in Orlando. Game 4 of that series is scheduled for Saturday at 10 a.m. Okay, moving on from things that have actually happened to hypotheticals, we're going to check in on mock drafts as the offseason goes on, with the Trailblazers having at least 2 picks, you would assume, unless the Warriors absolutely strike lightning, in the first round, and 2 picks in the second round. Still don't know which picks just yet because the draft lottery is not until middle of May, but until then, we can just go off of where they are assumed to get picks by probabilities. So as of right now, Kyle Boone at CBS Sports with the 4th pick has the Trailblazers taking Matas Buzelis, 6'8" G League power forward, Kyle Boone writes that Buzelis has made his way back into the top 5 mix after finishing strong with the G League Ignite. Did he? And showing off the big frame that makes him a potential supersized wing in the NBA. Would love to see his shot improve to pay off this price, but the size and movement skills are worthwhile building blocks for a team to pair with Scoot Henderson. And then with the 14th pick, Kyle Boone has the Trailblazers taking Dalton Knecht, I think, a senior shooting guard out of Tennessee, 6'6", 213 pounds. Boone writes that Knecht did well for his draft stock on the NCAA tournament stage with a dazzling 37-point outing versus Purdue in the Elite Eight, flashing the type of shot making that has launched him from Northern Colorado afterthought to potential lottery pick. Oh boy. He finished shooting nearly 40% from three-point range on major volume as the SEC Player of the Year. Kyle Boone didn't make any picks for the second round. At this point, I don't know why you would anyways. And in this draft, second round, not to mention even the end of the first round, is going to be a complete crapshoot anyways. So whatever these mock drafts end up looking like, they're probably just going to be these guys' opinions, because I don't think there's going to be any intel you're going to be able to get to predict this draft, even midway through the lottery, let alone all the way to the second round. All right, and two people that are going to have quite a bit of say in terms of who the Trailblazers end up taking in the draft are Chauncey Billups and Joe Cronin. So let's go ahead and hear from both at the exit interviews last week. Both went pretty long. Both had quite a few things to discuss about the team this year, both in terms of some of the things that they did well, some of the things they didn't do so well, and a lot of things they're going to need to improve as they continue this long-term rebuilding of the Trailblazers roster. So first, let's go ahead and hear from Trailblazers head coach and soon-to-be Hall of Famer Chauncey Billups at exit interviews last week in Tualatin.
Was it become increasingly frustrating every time a guy would go down? Because the goal was to develop players, but also develop chemistry, identity. But when guys are in and out, veteran guys, it's kind of tough to do any of that.
Yeah, I probably was a little crazy about it, because I felt like I could develop this year and compete, with the, I thought Joe in the front office, I thought we did a great job in what we was able to bring back for Dame, So I really thought that I would be able to, develop some of our young guys, but also really compete, to try to be in, to play in and, be competing for a real serious situation. And maybe I was a little unrealistic with myself. Maybe maybe I wasn't, maybe it was me, But I really thought, because we got some really good pieces on this team, we brought back some real winning type of pieces. So I thought I would be able to do both, And then when we could just never get any continuity, with bodies out there, it became very apparent that I probably wasn't going to be able to do both. And it was frustrating, because all I care about is winning, man. That's all I really care about is competing to try to win. So it was tough. That's what made this year so tough for me personally, But with that being said, I do feel like there were so many things gained this year for us in terms of development, where Scoot ended the year, I thought it was on a really, really high note, where DA started the year and where he ended the year was on a really high note. Jabari, Tumani, Chris Murray, we did a great job of developing these dudes and building the type of culture that I believe in. We had a handful of games that really got away from us this year where it was some tough losses, but in terms of us being, severely shorthanded most of the year, like teams had to earn their wins against us, and that's what I'm proud of, and that's what I believe in, and that's who I am. So there was a lot gained and a lot that was good about this year, even though we lost a lot of games.
What kind of conversations have you and Joe and the rest of the front office had about kind of what your goals are going to be next year going forward?
Yeah, Joe and I have always been, as y'all all notice, on the same page, and Joe does a really good job of letting me focus in on coaching during the season, and not talking too much about the future while the season is going on, because there is a lot for me to, it's a lot for me to go over and be present for during the season. But after the season, immediately after, we turn the page, and start talking about what's next. And obviously those are going to be some really important conversations for us. So that's going to be here going forward. But we haven't done too much of it before this presser, obviously.
In terms of your self-evaluation, now that you've completed another season, where do you think you've made your biggest strides as an NBA head coach, and what are some things you want to continue to improve on yourself as you move forward?
Yeah, I think, I do this all the time, but because I always think, looking in the mirror is the biggest thing that you always have to do, as a player, as a coach, as a person, period, whatever you're trying to accomplish. And I just feel like I've gotten better every single year. My patience has been tested, obviously, more and more. But just schematically, and me just kind of seeing the game, seeing things that need to change quicker in games, whether we can execute those adjustments or not has been, sometimes we can, sometimes we can't. But I think the fact I take a lot of pride in having been able to compete with these teams with far less talent because of some of the game plans and some of the adjustments that we make during games. It's allowed us to actually compete in some of these games that we shouldn't be competing in. So to me, that's growth. That's growth for me. So I'm light years ahead of where I was, but I also have a lot still to work on, as a coach. And I said this before, but I think like being so young, it's made me really dig deep and try to teach, 'cause that's what a coach is. He's a teacher. And you have to find different ways all the time, to try to get through or to try to teach, and sometimes you fail at it, and I've done that a ton. So one big, I guess, challenge, if you will, is that we haven't won yet here since I've been here. And I don't want, the guys that are here to think that that's just what it is, which is why I'm so proud that they fight like hell every night. And I try to make them believe every night that we have a chance to beat this team. And they believe it, And so to me, that's an improvement. That's tough. It's tough to come in to our locker room day after day after day after day. We losing these games, and still make our guys believe in what I believe in and what we're trying to do. That's tough to do, and our spirit is of a team that is probably won 50 games. Another thing that's tough to do when you got 21 wins. So I just feel like I've grown in a million places and a million spaces as a coach since I've been here, but also I got so much to learn still, and I'm looking forward to that opportunity. I just want that chance to continue to keep getting better and keep competing and be in this conversation. Like when the season ends last night or yesterday afternoon, like I want to be preparing for some big games, So that's definitely what I'm hoping that where we go.
Are you comfortable with this? Because you do have such a young core and an opportunity to add more this summer in the draft. I mean, if this is still a development situation next year, can you do both things again, where you're trying to compete and develop, or how comfortable are you with this remaining development situation as these guys get up to speed?
Yeah, that's a good question. For me personally, I just hope that we can be more gearing towards winning, trying to win first and then develop along the way, which is what I thought I would be able to do this year, but I wasn't. Obviously, we got a lot of picks in the draft this year. We got a lot of guys on our team this year that are young guys that are developing, doing well. And those are decisions and conversations that obviously, like I said, after the season, which is now, we'll start having. Joe and I will start having. But I really hope that we could start trying to really win, man. And I just know that, like, we all need to be better. Like, I need to be so much better when it comes to that. My staff has to be better and get better. Joe and his staff, they got to get better. Our H&P department, like, we got to get guys on. We just all, as an organization, I just think we all got to be committed to getting better. And, like, now, that's what's going to make me confident and make me happy about where we're going, if that makes sense. But I've had those conversations with Joe, about just us just demanding to be better, being better. So I'm confident in that. Joe and I, we on the same page with that for sure. But obviously, yeah, we got a lot of important conversations to have.
Coming into this season, you guys made it clear that it was development first, winning second. You obviously were going to try and win, but development was the priority. And I asked you specifically about Scoop versus Brogdon, that there was no competition, that Brogdon was way better, but you were going to start Scoop and maybe finish games with Brogdon. So, but it sounds like now you want to go into next season where winning's first, development second, and that you don't really want to go through another 50-loss season.
I would love that. I would love that for sure.
Require roster moves, not necessarily just bringing back the entire crew, right?
Well, first and foremost, it will require us just being healthy, I think we got some good players, man. Like, I really believe if we was healthy this year, we wouldn't feel this. I wouldn't feel like this, We went 21 games this year, and literally I don't even know if we had our roster for more than 5 or 6 games, I don't know what that would have been if we full roster. Do we win 35? Do we win? I don't know. But even with the depleted rosters and lineups that we play, we won 21, and we probably gave away 6 or 7 or 8. We up 26, 20-something, this, that, I don't know what would have happened, But I just know that, like, we already have good players on our roster. But there's a lot of things, like you say, like we should be looking at everything, to try to get better. But you also can't speed up the development without actually experience, which our guys, they got that experience this year. But yeah, that's 3 years in a row for me of losing 50, all these games, and I think we all know this. Like, that wasn't my plan when I came here, We had like a veteran-laden team, at the time, and we was hopefully trying to take a step up. But things change, Things change, and I've been fine with that, But we also got to be honest. Like, we could have been healthy all year, and the Western Conference is crazy. The Lakers, who I think got a really good roster, they've been healthy all year. They in the play-in. I think New Orleans got a hell of a roster. They in the play-in. The West is crazy, So, but I hope that we're in a position, where we can compete with some of these teams.
Chauncey, how do you said those conversations you and Joe are going to have, how do you guys have those conversations and come to conclusions after Shea misses so much time, after Ant misses so much time, after Scoop misses so much time? How do you, like you said, the West is crazy, but the NBA doesn't stop just so you guys can collect more data to make those decisions. So how do you make those decisions without having the necessary data or enough or whatever it is you need to make those decisions going forward?
Yeah, I think, obviously it sucked with Shaden being out this year. For more than anything, it sucked for him, to not be able to get the experience of playing through the year and competing and showing who he could be. But me personally, I don't have no questions about Shai. I think Shai's got a chance to be a star in this league. I think we've seen it. We've seen a small sample size of it this year with him. I'm very confident, I think about Scoot, Ant. Like I've seen enough to know what's possible. So I think we do have some data to make some of these type of decisions, to be honest with you. And then some of these decisions you get right. Sometimes you don't. But I think we do have enough data. We've studied our guys enough. Nobody studies more than Joe and that front office. They looking at it every single day. We look at it from two different lenses, but come together, So I'm confident in that part of it, that we've seen what we need to see, to try to make proper decisions, But that's why he's a big dog, man. That's why he's a big dog. That's what he do.
Two of the guys that were the healthiest probably were Toumani and Jabari. What did you like from their seasons, and do you think they kind of proved that they could be, a long-term solution in the 3 or 4 spot?
I was very happy with both guys. I start with Jabari like a year ago. Right now, I sat in that office in an exit meeting with Jabari and told him some of the things that he needed to do to prove to me that he is a real NBA player and can be a rotation player. And he attacked all of them. He got his body right. His understanding of what we wanted to do in his game and him guarding people, and he just attacked it all. And I'm so proud of him. He proved, to all of us that he's a player, man. He's a player. He's competitive. Obviously, his rebounding was a big deal. Bless you. But yeah, like Barry did a great job, and then obviously Toumani, I think he proved too, that both of them guys could potentially be starters on a real team, But two came and did what he had to do. I thought his presence was felt every single night. As a team, we were much better defensively this year, and Toumani had a lot to do with that, and so did Jabari when he played. So their presence was felt and missed when they didn't play, So kudos to both of those guys, man. They came and they did their thing.
Chauncey, going into they're going into year 4 here in Portland. You're also going into year 4 of your contract. Do you feel like coming into the season you're going to have something to prove as far as your own, job as a coach or any standing or anything?
I always feel that way. I always feel that way in this business. I always feel like you're trying to prove what you could do, and how good of a coach you could be, So I've always felt that way. I feel no differently about going into next year. I'm looking forward to having that opportunity, to be able to prove how good I could be as a coach. So I don't feel any differently about it. I think as a coach in this league and any league, and you in the professional ranks, you're always coaching for your job. It's just kind of part of the business. But that don't scare me. I'm not worried about that. I'll be fine. I'm looking forward to it.
Do you hope that there's a show of confidence in you and continuing to develop these young players by, picking up your options sooner rather than later, or maybe an extension or something, so they don't feel like you're developing players for someone else?
Yeah, that's a part of it, and that's a decision that that I don't make. I just try to do the best job that I can, and if they see that there's the value there to do it, then that's on them. But I'm committed to doing the best job, man. And trying to develop and trying to win and trying to teach, trying to compete, trying to mentor. I'm just committed to all of those things, and along the way, those are decisions that they have to make, So I'm not expecting nothing, but that's how I move, period. In my life, I don't expect that. I just expect me to do the best that I can. So that's a question not for me,
So there you go, Trailblazers head coach Chauncey Billups talking about the Trailblazers 2023-24 season. I feel like Chauncey, one of the things he does best, he never gets too high, never gets too low, is able to lead this team through some difficult times due to the fact that he doesn't really seem to let emotions really bother him all that much. I know he obviously gets upset when the team isn't playing well, and they had multiple times this year where they really weren't playing very well, but I think he's such a steady, calming presence in the locker room that it really helps this young team endure some of the issues they've already had to endure, and they're going to continue to endure as they rebuild this thing, hopefully back into a team that can compete for a championship. And the person with the most responsibility in that rebuilding is Trailblazers general manager Joe Cronin. Let's go ahead and hear what Joe had to say at exit interviews last week. Team general managers usually only talk to the media a couple times a year, so every time they do, it's really important to pay attention to what they have to say. So perhaps you've already listened to Joe already, but it never hurts to listen again. Here's Trailblazers general manager Joe Cronin at exit interviews in Tualatin last week.
All right. 23-24 season is over. Up and down year, but continue to be really excited and optimistic about where we're headed. The goal, throughout this season with this pretty much brand new group was essentially develop these guys, turn them into functional high-end basketball players, and then also start establishing our identity. How do we play? How do we gel together? Where are we headed? Those types of things. Individually, there were a lot of successes. Scoot Henderson's last 20 games, DeAndre Aton post All-Star break, Shaedon Sharp's first 20 games, Toumani Camara's entire season, Chris Murray's emergence late, Ryan Rupert shooting the ball better, Delano Banton post-trade deadline. So we're seeing a lot of good things happen throughout our roster. We just need to get that more frequent, more consistent, and happening more often throughout, from two ways all the way to the top of our roster. We've just got to keep getting better. And that's our challenge this offseason. We're going to continue to be aggressive and optimistic, looking for ways to improve this roster for the near future and the long term. And once again, we're just really excited about what we've accomplished thus far, and know we have a lot of work to do, but we're well on our way. With that, I'll open up to questions.
Will there be any kind of philosophical change in terms of going from development first, winning second, to maybe being more, like you said, you want to be aggressive, but being overly aggressive to make you put together a roster that can actually compete? Mm-hmm.
Well, we're heavily invested in our, in a lot of our young guys. So development will continue to be a focus. We're not going to win at an extremely high level until some of those guys are ready. But at the same time, it's our job to give them the best environment to thrive in. And often that's with additional help. I think this year there were some flaws in the roster, especially in some missing skill sets and just in general imbalance, where it made it complicated for those guys to reach their highest potential. There's skill sets we need to add, like we need more shooters. We've got to open up the floor for guys. We need more playmaking. We need more defenders. There's a lot of things we need. So we're going to continue to evaluate how do we supplement the existing group that we have, but at the same time, not ignoring we're not good enough yet. We don't have enough talent. Like, we've got to keep boosting our talent base. And it might be our most, important thing we do this summer is keep adding to this talent base.
Joe, what do you feel like you do? There's been a lot of, injuries, not a lot of continuity this season. So there's a lot of stuff that you don't know about kind of what this group can be together. What do you feel like you do know about this group kind of now that the season's over?
Yeah. You're right, Sean, with all the different lineups that we played this year, it's hard to point to a cohesive group and look and say, well, how do they exactly fit together? So what I've done this year more than anything, and what we're all looking at, is individually, where do these guys stand? What is each player on their own capable of? And then over time here, as we get to, acclimate them more and more, how do they gel together? And, that's what a winning product is going to look like. Once our talent base gets adequate. And once our system is able to, we're able to put these guys together in a comprehensive system, then we can start looking at outcomes.
Joe, Chauncey said that he had come into this year believing that you guys could win while developing, and he said maybe he was overly optimistic about that. But to hear you talk about development, and it sounds like patience is going to be really important with the young guys you do have. Chauncey's made a lot of comments lately about wanting to compete and wanting to win. Are you guys in the same place? Or is the front office and the coaching staff in the same place? Like, are you guys on the same page about what this is going to look like going forward?
We're on the same page that on a given night we want to be really, really competitive, and we want to keep taking steps in the right direction. I think that's an important part of this. A year like this one, it was hard when, we weren't as competitive on a cumulative one-loss record from a cumulative one-loss standpoint as we wanted to be. But I think we're really proud of how we competed on most nights. Now, moving forward, our goal is to keep progressing. And the rate can get complicated. The rate matters on how much are our guys developing, how quickly is Scoot coming along, how quickly is Shaden coming along, what transactions do we make this offseason, what does that look like, how talented can we become in the near future. And we're going to have to recalibrate that after this offseason and get a more accurate viewpoint of, okay, what is this roster really capable of?
I mean, are you guys committed to Chauncey going into next season, I guess?
Yes.
End of last season, last exit interview, you mentioned Chauncey's impact on the organization as a whole. Can you give any specific examples, away from the court about how he's impacted the Blazers? What's better about the Blazers in 2024 because of Chauncey?
Yeah. Chauncey's an incredible leader in this organization. Like, he goes above and beyond what a standard coach does. I mean, he helps me with staffing. Like, he's a part of all of our high-end staffing interviews. We spend a lot of time talking about our different departments throughout this organization and how we can make them better. He's really active with feedback and ideas and just looking at ways that we can improve. He's an incredible teacher, not just with our players and, in their development and in their, teaching them how to navigate this league, but also to our staff. I mean, he's a valuable scout. He's got a great eye and great feel for the game. So his personality is thoroughly felt throughout this building.
Joe, how big of a decision can you make on this roster going forward with the limited data set? How willing are you to index yourself? Smaller decisions to bigger decisions, considering the lack of data.
It's one of our biggest obstacles from this season is we didn't get a ton of data. But as a scout, as a person that evaluates personnel, it's sometimes you only have those small samples to make decisions. When we're scouting an international player and they play 8 minutes in that game and you get more out of warm-ups than you do during the game, sometimes you just have to make decisions based on the data you have and make your best guess. And obviously we have way more data than an 8-minute little subset. But, on someone like Shaden, we've got to go off of, 25 healthy games instead of, would have been ideally 75. But I think we still have windows that we can look through in order to give us a feel for what happened.
Will anything be done contract-wise with Chauncey so that he's not on a one-year guaranteed deal?
With all staff, I'll never get into contract discussions publicly. Yeah.
And just to clarify, the plan, it sounds like if something presented itself that allows you to, boom, we can be a playoff team, you'll go that route, but you're not going to throw all your chips in like you've talked about in the past because you value the youngsters' growth that much, and that if it comes to it and go to the next season with development being the primary focus again.
It's going to be a similar approach that we took to the trade deadline. Like, if the right player is available, if the right deal is there, if that player fits our timeline, and our timeline being short term, medium term, and long term. If that player fits with what we're trying to build, we will gladly go out and get that player. But that player has to make sense, from A, what does it take to get him? And B, how does he work towards our cap? And C, how does he fit with this group moving forward? So I don't think, once again, like we're not talented enough to be dismissive of any upgrades. And I will look at those, but they do need to fit a certain criteria that they can grow with this group. Mm-hmm.
Joe, obviously you guys are going to have, somewhere up there in a pick, top 5, hopefully. What have been your impressions of, this draft class? Because obviously it's been kind of talked about a little bit weaker. I mean, how does that kind of change how you value that pick this offseason?
We view it as an intriguing opportunity. This draft, there doesn't seem to be a ton of consensus, and we view that as an opportunity. That might allow us to find a player that someone didn't value as highly. They might be able to, get additional value beyond ahead of where they were selected. Like maybe we can find an incredible steal or surprise due to the uncertainty and the, confusion that can come with not a chalk draft. Like there's a lot of changes that can happen. It's going to open up a lot of opportunities for trades. It's going to open up a lot of opportunity for, movement within those pick ranges. So, I mean, for us, we view it as a exciting opportunity.
Did you learn more or enough about the 3 main guards, Scoot, Sharp, and Ant, to have a better idea of what the future looks like in the backcourt, or is it still too early in the process?
Yeah, I mean, we've learned a lot. The number one thing I've learned is they're all incredibly talented. And I keep saying that. You've probably heard me say talent at least 5 or 10 times this session. But it's true that we're not good enough to be dismissive of any talent throughout our roster. And what we saw from Scoot, Shaden, and Ant together and at different times, I think we saw a lot of high-end potential. And really that's what we're looking for here.
And there was a massive competition with a lot of young forwards. How do you analyze and sort of assess that group?
Yeah, it's a convoluted group in a good way. I think it's one of the big positives of how this season has played out. Tumani came in and essentially won the starting job right out of the gate and got better and better as the season went on. Jabari had a really nice year overall, highlighted by some, I thought, really high-end performances towards the end of the season, especially, obviously he rebounded the ball extremely well, but just in his overall aggressiveness and impact. Chris Murray showed his capabilities on both sides of the ball, like his ability to cover multiple different types of guys, his ability to play off the move offensively, his ability to be a nice glue guy in our league. I think all those things can, benefit us in so many different ways. But at the same time, we've got to figure out, who's playing and who isn't. Like these guys, like they still have a lot to prove and a lot to earn. And each of those guys that I name have some deficiencies that they have to address this offseason and moving forward. And, that's the culture we're trying to build is, come in and win your job. And, I told a lot of guys today in the exit interviews, my job is to find somebody better than you. My job is to find somebody to beat you out. Just as when I brought you in, you beat this person out. So, keep your pedal to the metal here because, our goal is to crank this up. And I like these guys, these young forwards mentalities. It's definitely something we've emphasized. And I'm happy with where these guys are at.
I've asked one more question. We have to ask you about Aton. He killed it the last 6 weeks. The last time we talked to you publicly was at the trade deadline where he was kind of struggling. What do you make of what he was able to do? And do you expect that guy to show up day one next year?
I do. DeAndre, he's made such steps this year. I mean, he obviously came in. We all know that DeAndre Ayton's extremely talented. But it was really encouraging to see the way he navigated this season. He started with us right when training camp started, so didn't get time to acclimate. And you saw early on it was a little shaky, and I wouldn't even say it's his fault. It was just us learning how to utilize him and him his teammates learning how to find him in the right spots, and then also him just acclimating and adjusting to this system. And by the time January, February hit, you could see like DA was a different player in his mentality. And I think a lot of that was he became comfortable and he began trusting us, and his happiness was increasing by the day. And you could see the relationship between he and his coach and he and his teammates was just getting better by the day. And by the end of the year, it became pretty fluid and common where he was putting together these big nights, and none of them were really fluky. This was just DA getting opportunity and DA doing his things. And I couldn't be prouder of him. Like, he's in a great place right now, and there's a lot of growth moving forward. DeAndre is still a very young big man in our league who's about as talented as they come, and that's our challenge, to maximize DeAndre Aton, and I'm really excited to see what that looks like. Thank you, everybody, for your coverage all season. You all are awesome. Really appreciate everything you do.
And I would reiterate Joe's comments there at the end about you, the listener, for joining me all season long here on The Briefcase. That is going to do it for this edition. That's going to do it for our Exit Interviews editions of The Briefcase. We'll probably take a little bit of time off, as there's really not much Trailblazer news to talk about right now. But when there is, we'll be back with new editions. So please like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, so that way you don't miss out on the newest editions of The Briefcase. And just so you know, too, I typically will post these and then put up the actual post on Trailblazers.com later. So if you subscribe to The Briefcase, you get it before a lot of other people who are just coming across it on the website. Thank you for joining me. As always, we'll talk again soon. I am Casey Holdahl. Go Blazers.